Hello, YouTube. My name's Gray Miller. You are maybe watching the Papermancy channel, and I'm going to make a zine. To be clear, I've already made a zine. This is a rough draft of my Neuroqueer Creative Practice Manifesto, which is itself a thing made from the original draft inside this book of my manifesto, which I made as part of the Neuroqueer Creative Practice. That was a workshop done by K.R. Moorhead and others. They have a wonderful group there. The only complaint I have is that they are based in England, and the two times that I could actually take part in their weekly groups are just one is 4 a.m. and one is right after my writing group that I've been a part of for a long time. So I can't be a part of it as much as I would like to. It's a great group. I got a whole lot out of the workshop that continues to inform my practice. And in case you're wondering what neuroqueer refers to, the easy way to say it is that if you neuroqueer, then you are neuroqueer. But that's circular logic, but that's okay. Circular stuff is fun. I've written a lot about why I enjoy this particular group, but I will say that part of the whole idea of being neuroqueer is part of the ADHD, being differently neurologically built. And as I am a creative person in many, many different ways, it also it enables me to more intentionally be that way rather than trying to be like a lot of other people. For example, I'm about to make a zine, and I'm going to make a zine in a way that may not make a lot of sense, at least not to you. I don't know if this is the way you're supposed to make zines, but it's the way I'm going to make it because I want to do it. So without any further ado, here we go. And I will actually read the zine as we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is, since I have this baseline piece, which is made from a folding of these papers, this is a 8.5 by 11 piece of, actually it's a manga sketch pad that Caslon puts out. And that's what I did my rough draft on in pencil. I thought about, doing the traditional, hey, I'm not going to do pencil all the time. Um, I'm going to do my thing with a ink now. And I will, but you know what? I'm not going to redo the whole thing. And look at that. I am being so counterculture. Instead of using an actual, well, I thought I was being cool using the Oohoo stick instead of the other, but did I just lose I did lose my making my local recording. My bad. Am I still live? Apparently I'm still live. Okay, I'll just be live. That's fine. As an experiment anyway. Um, anyway, as I said, I was thinking I would be all really counterculture and not use a bone folder and use my glue stick. They always talk about you can use a lot of different things for instead of a bone folder. I will say that I found the glue stick not to be one of the more useful ones. So with that being done, it's kind of funny. I'm trying to be all fast and loose here, but I thought I had my tools very close by, I'm sure. So there's no reason that I couldn't just use the right tools, except turns out I don't have my tools right by. In case you're wondering, this is sort of a procrastinate productivity in that I should be cleaning up my office so that I could do things like find my tools, but instead I'm making the zine. So anyway, so now I'm going to do the hot dog fold, which is the technical term for this particular thing. I know, like any good hobby, you got to learn all the really fancy terminology. Okay, now I usually go twice in the middle here because I should be technical. I am making a 1/8 fold, sometimes called a mini zine. Um, I just love these things. I wrote a whole article about them. I call them codexes, and I think they're really fun and very useful. Also, the reason this is going to be a final draft is because, I don't know if you can tell, but this is just plain white paper, and this is a parchment paper, so it has kind of a rough color to it. Not a lot of color, but some color. Good enough. All right, so let's get that a little more in there. All right, do that, make the mouth, and fold it up. All right, so now I've got my, basically my canvas for my zine. Okay, and now, this is just a spare one for whatever, I don't need it. Now, I'm actually going to destroy this because I did some things kind of weird on this. For example, I started writing the manifesto on the very top part, and then I actually do the title underneath. I don't like that. I don't want to do it that way. So I'm going to unfold it. And I know I could do something fancy like cutting it, but I am actually, it is almost a conscious design choice for me. I like ripping things. Okay, and I do like ripping a lot of things. So I'm actually going to rip like my name out of here very carefully because, yeah. So I'm going to rip it. Rip it good. All right, here's my name. Here's the word manifesto. Okay, manifesto. And then we have this part here. Now, I will confess, I'm a little bit nervous about the word manifesto because of, that's what the Unabomber had, and that's what I heard. But, there's a full and robust tradition of manifestos within lots of creative practices. And in this particular case, of this particular writing, I do think of it as having the power and the intensity that is designed by a manifesto. A manifesto is, to me, something that you absolutely believe in and want to um, extol as the thing that should be done. So we are going to start with the Neuroqueer Creative Practice Manifesto. So make that a little more rough. And I'm going to use glue. There's going to be a lot of gluing. Whole lot of gluing going on. And I'm supposed to get a piece of scrap paper. Where'd that paper go that I threw away? There it is. Okay. So I get a piece of scrap paper. Why? That was weird. I don't know if I'm still alive. I don't know if I'm having just all kinds of issues, but wow. We're definitely having some blinky times in my monitors today. I suppose what I could do is just turn off this one. I don't really need it. And that will put everything right over there. He thinks. Maybe not. Wow. I thought I was all set up for this, but I could be very wrong. Okay. Let's go up here and quit Safari. There we go. And yep, looks like we're still alive. So we'll keep going. All right. Finely tuned machine. That's what my particular way of doing things is. All right, I'll take this line here. One of the reasons I wanted to rip this up is because, for the title at least, I did want to have things centered. Neuroqueer Creative Practice Manifesto, and then have my name off to the side. One of the interesting things that I have, so you may have noticed, I am in fact a middle-aged cis white male. is trying to decenter myself. And I can't say that I do a great job of it, but I try. And the problem is that it gets in the way of when I'm doing work like this. So I'm going to go ahead and do some inking here. I'm using, these are STA markers. Well, there's actually quite a few. There's fine liner graphics. And these are all actually left over from when I did a lot of lettering. I'm actually going to use the 1mm tip because this should be a very intense one. So, all right, let's get a little closer. There we go. And I'm going to move over to the side here and go that way because I am left-handed, which means if I do it this way, it'll get in the way. But if I do it this way, then I get in the way. It's funny, I'm trying to move my head. There we go. That's better. All right. Do a little inking. Now, I realize I could try and make this very fancy and neat, but I feel like that kind of takes away from the whole idea of being the zine ethos. Zines came out of, well, I mean, they came out of, historically, there's always been some kind of a zine, but most of the current thing that we call zines uh, is rooted in the punk community. I would never ascribe to saying that I am punk, but I do have a whole lot of respect for it, and out of respect for it, not trying to make this all like perfect and everything like that. I am making sure that the message itself is what is focused on. And if the materials are relevant, it is the fact that they are being done within that same ethos that is the relevance, not trying to show any kind of, oh, mastery or gatekeeping or things like that. So, Neuroqueer, and for the fine little line there, I'll use the 0.8, I think. There we go. Creative practice. Practice is the most important word in all of this. Even more important than queer, I would say, because it is actually the path of what you're doing. I may not always be as queer as I would like to be or as creative as I would like to be. You know, to be honest, I am usually way more creative than I would like to be. You know how there's always those articles and things like that that say, hey, do you want to figure out how to be more creative in your life? And I'm always like, no, I would like to be less creative. Could you please give me a way to have less ideas? Because I have way more ideas than I can actually do things with. But that's the point of practice, is that to take the things that I feel like I need to or want to do and make sure that I'm actually walking the walk, walking the path that will let me do it. Why, these are not as dark as I would like them to be. This is what happens when you let your markers go dry. And what's funny is I always go to the stores and I drool over the markers like everybody does. And then I go, no, I don't need new markers. I have markers at home. And I do, but I don't use them enough. And so they go dry. It's not good. I may have to get a different marker or a brush pen before I continue with this. I think brush pen is going to be the way to go. All right. Neuroqueer Creative Practice Manifesto by Gray Miller. Sorry about that loud crash there. All right, so here we have Oh, well, I have another fine liner. I don't have the brush pen that I thought I had. That's sad. I wonder if it's somewhere else in here. It's always funny when you think you have everything set up, and then you discover in the middle of the show that no, you do not. All right, let's see here. Well, I guess I'll just go with that one. This one I know has some ink in it. And we will find the brush pen later. All right, where were we? This thing is not the best place to have. Maybe I need to move that over a little bit. There we go. That's a little bit better. You can see me now, mostly. All right, so Neuroqueer Creative Practice Manifesto. So let's start out with that. Let me just double check something here. Nope, that does go on the front page. Okay. I did make notes on this as to what pages I want things on, but I'm not sure that they're going to work out the way I hoped. But we'll figure that out. All right. So the manifesto starts by saying, don't romanticize one kind of practice over another. The fact that I am ripping up paper and making a zine does not make this any less valid than when I am setting letterpress and making a fine print. Not that I actually ever do that. It's just an example of something that I would romanticize normally and say, oh, that's much more important. Don't. Really? This one too? Don't romanticize. I should add this didn't just come out of the creative practice. It actually came out of a follow-up after I had been in a creative practice workshop. I went and I had a drink with my friend Carl, and we started talking about the idea of like paying dues, um, the way that people have to, do that kind of thing. And I really found that, especially after the Neuroqueer Creative Practice, that I really resented the idea that within a creative practice you had to pay dues in order to have it be valid. Um, some of this comes from my immense respect for uh, folk art and things like that. But the idea is don't romanticize one practice over another. And towards that end, we talked about how when you're neuroqueer or when you're queer in general, um, just the act of being yourself, being who you really are, can be has to be a creative act. Now, this might also be informed somewhat by the fact that I am dating Jennifer Moon, who is a performance artist in LA, and she very much lives her art. Like her life is the art. But I came to it also before that. I came out of the practice of University of Wisconsin, the InterArts Technology program, which is basically performance art. Uh, and in that way, I became more involved in the idea of performance art. And so the first part of the manifesto says, if just being yourself, as if you could actually be anyone else. I think if you're trying to be someone else, you're just being yourself, trying to be someone else. But if being yourself is an act of creation, Oh, you know what it is? It's the glue. That's what's making these things go. If that's the case, then creating in any form, even ripped up paper glued, it becomes creativity embodied. Now, embodied is a funny word, but embodied means given a physical manifestation. That's how it's intended to mean here. Okay. If I say, and some things are hard to embody. Like if I embody, can I embody trust? That'd be difficult. And you can describe creativity as a phenomenon or whatever, but the fact is that if it just remains an abstract object until it is embodied. The point is that um, when you are being yourself, and you're creating yourself constantly, but also when you are creating this form, whatever you're doing, whatever form of creation you're doing, you are an embodiment of that phenomenon of creativity. I'm not sure if any of this is going to make any sense. I don't care. That's not the need. I don't need to worry about that. All right. So, you know the saying, consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds? I think that we tend to cultivate hobgoblins in creative practices because we tend to say, it's just showing up. As long as you just show up, well, what if you don't show up? Does that mean you can't be creative? What if I haven't shown up for a year, 2 years, 10 years? Does that mean that suddenly I am not creative? Um, does that, what is consistency? Does that mean if I show up after 5 years of not playing piano and I play a masterpiece, I play something absolutely amazing, and someone else has been practicing 10 years every single day for an hour a day, but their piece, they did not have one that was as, I know we're using value judgments here, but that's what the world does. They talk about world-class pianists and things like that. If a world-class pianist doesn't play for uh 3 years and then shows up and does it, are they suddenly not as good because the other person was consistent? Conversely, if the other person is consistent but isn't as good, based on whatever form people think of as being the measure of good piano playing, does that make a difference? Also, doesn't it depend on the audience? I mean, it seems to me that if someone is if an uninformed audience or an uneducated audience in whatever form of art they're using, if they show up and suddenly, they listen to the piano playing, but they don't know what to appreciate, was it really good? I mean, is it good if it's just done? If the audience doesn't like it, does that still mean it's good? I know, how many different pens am I going to use on this thing? So that's my thing, is that consistency is a hobgoblin for sure. Absolutely is a hobgoblin. Foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds, is the saying that they have. But I'm going to say that regardless of whether it's foolish consistency or not, it's still a hobgoblin. And I'm not saying that hobgoblins are bad. Hobgoblins are fine. I'm not sure you should let them determine the value of your creative practice. That's all I'm saying. So instead, the answer to my own question there of does it still count as good? Is that yes, it is still good because the person who is performing can trust themselves to do it, regardless of whether or not the people who are around are appreciating it. In other words, trust your gut. My gut said, hey, I could make a magazine live on YouTube. And then my brain went, oh, wait, I don't have the right film. I don't have the right lighting. I don't have the right camera. how can I really do this? And, you know, then I went, nope, you know what? I'm going to trust my gut. I'm just going to go and do it. Just going to do it. Now, um, let's see. How am I going to do this next part? Yeah. I'm going to change on the fly because what I have is this whole section here, and that's too much to put there. So we're going to go right to the swearing. So this is the point when I will tell you, we will either have swearing or um, I will have to edit them out and YouTube will make me do that. So I will just say that the only real swear word that we have in this video rhymes with the word luck. Okay, so this is the thing that I owe Carl actually, because this was my reaction when he was talking about paying your dues and improving and being master. My response was, fuck better, fuck improvement, fuck mastery. That is not what a creative practice is about. Those are all rooted in a capitalist notion of, yeah, that's right, I'm one of those. I know, I'm wearing a Marine Corps shirt. How can I be, talking about communist things as if, or socialist and communist things? Does that pen write? Nope, that pen doesn't write either. Boy, am I looking unprepared here. How about that? Okay, how about this good old-fashioned one? Nope, totally dead. Totally dead. How many pens can I go through? This may become the Gray Needs Pens show. Any of those work? Maybe. Nope. 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 All right. I'll be right back. Talk amongst yourselves. Except, of course, you might be talking amongst yourselves, and I would never know because I did not bother to look at what the chat was doing. I decided that was not something I want to do. Does this one work? Not really. Wow. Note to self. Get some better pens. My goodness. This is remarkable. Huh. See what I did there? Remarkable, because it's really not remarkable because, nope, that brush pen isn't very good either. See, the problem is I do have good pens. I just didn't bother to get them out for this stream. So there's sort of a level of self-sabotage going on here. There's another couple that might work. Let's see how these work. Oh, that's a nice one. Not very thin on the tip. It's a good brush pen. We'll see. That might be good for the... Yeah, those two will work. All right. We're back. So yeah, when we talk about how, you're only doing a creative practice if you are doing that deliberate practice for 10,000 hours or things like that, I'm going to say, fuck that. In fact, I'm going to brush write it 3 times in thick letters so you know I mean it. That's right. There we go. That's the wrong one. What one did I say I was going to use? I think it was this one. Yep. Better. Yeah. Carl and I were having a discussion, and he's of the opinion that, you have to, in order to be considered an artist, you have to have a consistent practice, you have to be improving, you have to be moving towards that before you can be considered to have achieved any kind of mastery. And there is a definite value put on mastery over just, fucking around. And I'm not saying he's wrong. He's definitely not wrong within the realm of most art education and things like that. I just believe that within the neuroqueer creative practice, that is not a good way to try and consider it. Um, that it is you don't have to pay your dues, put in things. There's not that kind of thing. If you are creating, then you are an artist. If you want to be one, if you don't want to be one, you don't have to be. Um, but the act of creation in terms of pursuing mastery and art and things like pursuing mastery or fine arts and that doesn't have any intrinsic value hierarchically than any other kind of art. Um, Now, I know I went, well, what about AI art? Is that, I mean, I'm not going to say that anything is not art. I won't even say that anything is good art or bad art. I'll just say that there is art that I like and there is art that I don't like. And subjectively, I do not like AI art, um, both because of um, the roots of it and also because of the just the sort of banality of it. Um, so what I'm saying is, and the way I said it in here, is that whatever you are creating, at any given moment, if it is actually the thing that you are drawn to create, the thing that your gut says, yes, this is what I need to make right now. I'm not saying authentic. I'm saying you're not doing it in the hope of fulfilling some other thing, but it's the thing that you are drawn to do right now that um that that is the real embodiment of that creativity. And I'm not saying I do this, by the way. I'm doing it right now. I'm totally winging it. I don't even know if this is going on YouTube. I may get done with this and just have a zine. That's okay. This is just it. But if you're doing that, it is not, if it is not better, you see what I'm doing? If I said it was better to do that, if I said authenticity was better or more genuine or something like that, then I am doing that same thing. Um, I'm not saying it's better by some arbitrary standard that was created by yourself or others. Because, hey, we do this to ourselves. I mean, I definitely am sitting here going, you know what? Carl's going to be mad at me because I quoted him without giving him a chance to rebut. Carl, I promise you, first of all, if I haven't made it clear yet, I don't think Carl was wrong. Carl was inspirational in helping me create this. And the fact that we disagree does not mean that he's wrong at all. And also, Carl, if you want, I would be happy to let you state your case here as well. Um, I am not being, I'm trying to give you credit for what you inspired. Um, so if it's the thing, it is not that it is better than any other thing. Um, it's it's that, where am I now in this? I'm losing track of my pieces of paper. All right. So it is not better. Um, but I will say that that act of creating things that you are drawn to that you are drawn to do from within yourself, that you're not doing it for sake of something else, that particular thing is something that I do think is worth mastering. And this is, I guess, going to be a little cliffhanger, because I'm going to say in manifesto, I have to state declarative sentences. The only art worth mastering, whatever that term may mean to you, and this is going to be the secret as to how I believe you can tell what you are drawn to, how you can tell this is the thing I should be doing, is the art of on the page. Oh, there's nothing there because I haven't done it yet. Oops. Here's what it is. Remember I talked about the piano player who could play for an audience that had no idea of how the particular kind of music they were playing might sound? I mean, they could be completely masterful, but the audience doesn't get it, doesn't understand it. There's not some magical thing that will just take them over, regardless of how romantic you make, other things say. If people aren't in a place to appreciate something, they aren't going to appreciate it. Okay. So the way that you can tell that you are on the right track, again, there goes another value judgment. The way you can tell that you're doing this kind of stuff that I'm talking about is when you are doing and struggling and mastering the art of creating joy for myself. In other words, creating things that bring you joy. The most amazing performances I've ever seen, whether I understood them or not, the fact is that's when the person who was performing was having a lot of fun. They were enjoying the fuck out of it. Okay? They really, really found it really enjoyable. And that is what I think is the thing. Now, this is a manifesto that I created for my creative practice. And part of the reason why is because I rarely do this. Okay. I will create things for other people. I will create things that I think people will buy. I'll create things I think people will like. Do I think people are going to like this manifesto? Don't know. Don't know. What I appreciated about the Neuroqueer Creative Practice thing was that um, guess what? I just found a piece that I didn't put in right. This is now going to be a mistake. Haha. A happy accident, as they say. So, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, that I have a tendency, this is also rooted in the ADHD idea of, people pleasing. Now, I'm not saying I people please all the time. Um, so, boy, I totally lost track of where this is going. Yep, I was supposed to. No, that's fine. It'll work. Yeah, actually, you know what? This will work the way it was. Aha! Take it off, put it back on. All right, so what was I saying? I was talking about the fact that the reason this is important to say, to talk about creating joy for myself, is because when you spend so much time trying to please the algorithm, trying to please, the norms for whatever body you happen to inhabit. I'm wearing a United States Marine Corps sweatshirt, which you may or may not like, but it is as much a part of my identity as me being left-handed or me being a father or a grandfather or anything else. And, I actually enjoy wearing it because I like to point out that you don't get to decide what a Marine looks like. Okay, just like you don't get to decide what a man looks like, or you don't decide what a woman looks like a Marine is someone who wrote a blank check to the United States government and said, if you need me, I'll show up. And some of them, the government cashed the check, and some of them, like me, they didn't. I spent a lot of time keeping the beaches of Southern California free from communism. And did I succeed? I mean, that's arguable. Um, but I didn't get called into service. I served during peacetime. Uh, many of my fellow Marines did not. And I have great respect for them. And I wear this shirt because I have that respect for them. I think that at its core, the heart of being in that particular branch of military is the desire to protect things and protect people and give. Now, don't get me wrong, I know the history of the Marine Corps is not filled with joyful ideas of them trying to um, protect people. There's a whole lot of bad stuff that has happened, but there's also more than you'd think. That's another subject. But the point is that I spend a lot of time trying to live up to various roles, either that I created arbitrarily or that my parents or my schools or society as general has tried to create. And there's a just like masculinity. My friend Dan, I'm sorry, I can't remember your last name. Is an excellent person talking about gender roles, and they um, pointed out once to me that gender is a performance that can never be fulfilled, especially masculinity, because you can always find somebody who's more masculine than anybody else, and that's how it's used to control people. Because if they can keep you trying to do it, then that is, I'm digressing from the art stuff, so we'll get into all that other stuff later on. That's what a live stream is for, right? So, do I mean that you should just do art selfishly, only for yourself? Well, yes, you should. You should do art selfishly, I think. I think that's absolutely a case. But um, if other people do benefit from it, hey, that's great. If other people enjoy it, that's even better. You know, I'm going to go sing some songs for my granddaughters, my granddaughter and my grandson at their preschool, and I hope that they like it. My primary thing is going to be I'm going to go have fun because I will have been the grandpa that came and sang that does that for me. It's sort of fulfilling a role, but I do also enjoy it. I hope that they like it. That'll be cool. And on a side note, I hope that the other kids like it and the teachers like it. That's great. But if they don't, oh well, you know. So, yeah, I am doing here. So if they benefit from it, that's great. But and when I say it, I mean your Neuroqueer Creative Practice in UCP, it has to be rooted, it has to grow out of the practice of joy. Um, and I can tell you that I see this more and more as I try different creative practices. The first time I was going to do a vendetta show, I thought I had these notebooks that I was making. Sure, I'll have lots of little notebooks. These will be great. And I said, I need to have X number of notebooks of these kinds of things to make them money. And I was in production mode. I'm making notebooks, making notebooks, making notebooks. And I like making notebooks. But when you have to do it, when you're in that kind of production mode, it gets to be a little much. And I found myself really one night, came downstairs, okay, it's time to work on notebooks. And I was just like, fuck it, I don't want to do notebooks. And so I grabbed a piece of watercolor paper and I started collaging and grabbing old pieces of my notebooks and words and lettering and stuff like that. By the way, you're old when you look up the definition of vintage and find out that your own notebooks count as vintage. which is great when you are, writing up the description of the collage. You can say with vintage notebooks that I wrote. Anyway, but the idea is that if I did that just from a need to, this is what's going to actually feed me this, and I had a real fun time doing it. Now I sold a lot of notebooks. They went fine. Didn't sell all of them. People weren't like thrilled with them, but I sold a good portion. You know what did sell? That was the first thing to sell at the art show was my collage. It was the first big art piece I'd ever done. And I was amazed. I tried to second guess myself. I'm like, oh wait, because this is an event that I actually had started. I've retired from it since then, but I thought, oh, this is somebody just being nice. Oh yeah, great. No, this was somebody who had never heard of me, never been to the event before. Literally, she just saw the collage. It spoke to her and she wanted to buy it, and she did. My first actual art sale, and it came out of that need to do joy. Okay. So, um, and this is where within this Neuroqueer Creative Practice Manifesto, I emphasize that piece that I made, that collage. I'm not a fine art collage person. Okay. I don't pretend to be. I don't have a lot of experience with collage. Um, I've done some collage. I've done more now since that time. But the point is that uh, for my neuroqueer creative practice, it can't be about trying to be better. Okay. Um, it's not about producing better art. It's not about getting faster at creating art. It's not about making bigger art. It's not about making more money. Oh God, is it never not about that? You know what's funny? I do hope that this YouTube channel actually gets over, is it 100,000 that you need for getting the plaque? For the plaque. Not because I have no idea if that would translate into any money at all. I know like there's like people online that say, here's how your views translate. I don't care. I think the plaque is cool. I think that silver plaque is cool. I want that silver plaque on my back wall. That's why I hope this YouTube channel. This is why I'm not rich. This is why I do not have a lot of money, because I'm motivated, I guess literally, by shiny things. Um, kind of like when I pick out a cigar or wine. Like if you have a wine bottle with a like a pinup on it, and I know the wine is terrible, but it's a really good pinup picture, I will get that wine because I am easily swayed by labels. Um, I felt bad recently. I was having a talk with my friend Devin about moleskin notebooks, and I had told him that, oh yeah, that moleskin notebook, it's it used to be a good book, and then the brand got purchased by a company which I think is Italian now. Maybe they were Italian before and they aren't, but whatever it was, they traded on the name, but they definitely changed the production of it. And so it doesn't have the same quality that it had had before. And I felt bad about that because I felt like I was taking away some of the joy that Devin gets out of moleskin notebooks. In the same way, I feel bad when I say that I don't like AI art because I have friends who really like making AI art. And I have a hard time going along with that. So, um, the thing is that we always tend to put, oh, look at there. I'm even doing it right now. Catch the hyperbole? We always tend to put, we often tend to quantify things. We tend to try and make things bigger than they need to be, or we try to, value them if there is more, if they are larger, whatever it may be. But it's not about quantifying things. And then I said, right after I say all these things about it's not producing better art, um, then I say, it's about increasing the joy. You see what I did there? I just made it go, it's about increasing, because even in my Neuroqueer Creative Practice Manifesto, I still fall into the same trap of thinking that I need to make things bigger in order for them to be worthwhile. Luckily, I cut myself. They say cut myself, I caught myself. And this is one of those parts where I get to make that part of the zine itself. So it's a simple word, but it is a complete sentence. Where's the thing? No. So we will put that there. One of the reasons I like doing this is because I like the way that this lets me control the rhythm of the reading and bundling them together. All right, now I've only got 3 pages left, and I've got 1, 2, well, basically 3. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna make it. It's gonna work. All right. So where were we talking about a second ago? We were talking about the fact that the reason I need to remind myself of this is because I do tend to fall into that whole people-pleasing realm of ADHD a lot. You know, it's a way to avoid the RSD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria. Those who may not know. Yeah, and all that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and, ooh, almost ripped a word. I just like the aesthetic of tearing. Maybe that's part of the marine thing. I don't know. We are good at breaking things, that's for sure. It really is actually it's a useful skill when applied in the right places and times. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's talk about what neuroqueer means. Now, I am not an expert on neuroqueer. I'm an expert on being the kind of neuroqueer that I am, because I've been doing that my whole life, whether I knew it or not. I think my favorite quote, I don't even know if I think they did it in this one, but in this, may have been Marta who said it, but it was a quote from Dolly Parton, which is, what you need to do is find out who you are and then be that on purpose. I have been neuroqueer my whole life. I've not been being that on purpose. In fact, I've spent a lot of time with a lot of encouragement from various teachers and people to try not to be that, because it's kind of weird. But once I've started to say, hey, you know what, it's okay to be that way, now things are starting to get a little bit better. So let's talk about what this means in terms of the creative practice. So neuroqueer, as in different than normal. Queer means different than normal. I'm not talking about gender or sexuality or anything. Neurologically, neuroqueer, outside of the mainstream, it does not just mean rejecting other people's judgment of your art. Okay, it doesn't mean it's not enough to just say, I don't care what you think of my art, I'm going to do it anyway. I mean, it's a good thing to do. I think everyone should do that, with the understanding that there are consequences. It doesn't, I'm not saying you can't have consequences. I'm saying that you absolutely have the right to make your art, as long as you're willing to face the consequences. For example, I may get kicked off YouTube because I used a swear word that I shouldn't have used. I don't think that's quite going to happen, but maybe. I mean, now at this point, they've had it on C-SPAN and things, so. So it's not just not accepting others' judgment of your art. It's not about just that. But it is also, boy, I'm just not making that very easy to see, am I? Let's get that Paperman C logo up out of there. All right. It is also not And this is where I get, yeah, but did I mention I'm actually a writer? You can go to graymiller.medium.com and see a lot of my writing, or papermancy.art. But yeah, I'm about to pull out some $10 words. So it is not taking the enculturated, socialized, internalized. I feel like I'm about to do like John Travolta in Grease. It's hydromatic. No, it is enculturated, socialized, internalized standards. Because we all got them. That's what my conversation with Carl sort of revealed to me. Because I didn't start thinking that I was going to disagree with him about what it took to, what qualified as being good art or being a good artist. I thought I agreed with him. But then when I heard him say it, heard him put it into words, I realized that based on what I'd learned in the Neuroqueer Creative Practice program, that didn't resonate for me anymore. That was not something that I could agree with. In fact, I was almost violently against it. Okay. Um, so, um, yeah, because you don't want to get quantitative or qualitative. Um, it's about finding joy in the creative act. And this is where I'm actually going to edit this creative practice manifesto because I actually went on a little digression of a different situation that I realized afterwards kind of it took away from it because I believe very much in if you're going to make a point and you want to make it strong, make that point and let it hit and don't dilute it with other things. Not that other things aren't relevant, but in terms of the time you have to communicate, that's what's going on. Wow, this is a long, I hope this is actually live streaming somewhat because this is a nice long live stream. And if you're still here, by the way, thank you. I appreciate it. So your neuroqueer creative practice is about finding the joy in your creative act, whatever that looks like. Now, please know, joy, I don't believe joy is happiness. I don't believe joy is pleasure. Okay, I have a very strict definition of what joy is. Joy is when you do something that later on you will not regret doing it. Like, and usually it has to do with pleasure. But if I have an ice cream cone, it makes me happy. Doesn't necessarily mean that I won't regret it later on. On the other hand, playing music for preschoolers, which is something I have done when I think about that, it is something that brings me joy and that's been like 30 years since I've done this. Like, it is something that will always be there. The time that I went and juggled at my daughter's school, that brought me joy. Um, the fact that one of my most joyful memories, I'm going to try not to tear up here. One of my most joyful memories is feeding my twin daughters in the middle of the night. Holding them. My wife, not married anymore, but my wife at the time, couldn't nurse them because of other issues. So I was up feeding them. Uh, Interesting fact. You know how they talk about babies getting up every 2 hours? They do that, but oftentimes when they're twins, they will alternate. So I was getting up about every hour, feeding the twins. I basically just went clinically insane for a year or two. But I remember very clearly right now the the moonlight coming in the window, shining on my daughter's face, her eyes looking up at me, not comprehending anything except I was the one who was feeding her this formula, which is what she wanted. And at the time, I was not filled with love and pleasure and all that stuff. It was not fun. Okay. I was like, "God, finish drinking, go to sleep, you know? Um, but now I think back on that, and that is one of the most joyful memories I have. So that's what I think of in terms of joy. Um, so that means that if you do feel the need to put in the hours and, play till your fingers bled, to your fingers bleed or things like that, in order to get what you want out of things, I don't think it'll be fun. But I do think that that may be what you need to do to have the joy. And if that's the case, that's great. Do it. Don't let me stop you. Boy, that is still not working very well. I wish I knew what was going on with these pens. If you want a good reason to go to papermancy.art and click on the tip jar, you can go ahead and do that, and I will buy myself all new pens so this doesn't happen again. But here's the thing. A lot of people say I am pursuing my craft. Now, this is where I went on the digression because I realize that we use a whole lot of aggressive, violent words to describe the creative practice. We say things like nailed it or almost good enough or things like that. We even use things like we succeed or we learn. Well, no, how about we just always learn, which means we always succeed. Or it's not about success. It's not about success because you can't have success without having also failure. You can't have a successful state with also having a failure state. Is that true? Discuss. Please put your essays in the comments. Okay. But anyway, that whole thing was a digression. I got to grind it out. You have to pay your dues. That's another one that we use that is literally a word of violence because it implies a certain class of people that has the resources, whether that be money or whatever, to pay your dues, and another group that doesn't, and who therefore their art is somehow less worthy. Their creative practice is less worthy. And especially, I mean, you ever want to get an idea of just how weird art is? Do a deep dive into how the whole fine art world does things with pricing and things like that. I mean, it's insane. It's why when I was hearing about NFTs and that whole insanity, I was like, oh, they caught up with the regular fine art world. Okay, so um, I don't like the idea of us having to do do that kind of thing where we're looking and looking and looking and trying to use words of violent of pursuing. You're not a predator of joy. Ooh, would that be a good name for a band or a good name for a movie? the new it's the Predator Barbie crossover called Predator of Joy. Um, okay, now I want to have a Barbie Predator, you know, with the coloring and everything like that. But anyway, um, it's not about pursuing it. And I go into a whole digression when I wrote out this on paper, which I am now deciding does not actually serve the message. It's not about pursuing it, it's about finding it. How do you find something when you are not pursuing it? It's through exploration. You got to try stuff. For example, I haven't done a live YouTube that was just my own thing. I don't know if I've ever done it. That was just me saying, "Hey, this is for me. This is my own work, my own purpose." I've done it for a lot of other places that I've worked for or causes or things like that, but I haven't done it for me, like I'm doing it right now. And I got to say, I'm enjoying myself. I mean, I don't know if I find out this didn't happen. If it didn't actually broadcast well, that just means that I enjoyed myself going through the motions, and I'm going to do it again later. So it is about finding it. Okay, it is not about trying to pursue it, to catch it. I think Elizabeth Gilbert in her magic book, which the title's escaping me, says something like that about the idea of ideas themselves, that it's not about trying to chase them down. It's about being open to the process, to be open to the things that might be there. And so I'm gonna just wrap this up a little bit too. Yeah, I'm almost done. Almost got this done. All right. So this is not about the creative practice. Now remember, I'm saying the creative practice. I'm not saying the creation of art. I'm not saying the art itself, product, whatever you're working towards creating. Talking about your creative practice, the thing that you keep coming back and being drawn to doing. I'm going to say that that creative practice is not about achieving a vision. And then I'm going to make it even more clear. It's not about achieving a vision. Okay. In fact, I'm going to object to the word vision because I feel like Jennifer would be so proud of me and as I say this, but uh, because if you are observing something, you're separate from it. Okay. If I'm observing, you're observing me right now. And that means that you and I are separated by time, by the screens, by ideology. There's all kinds of things that are separating us, but we are sharing ideas. Not saying there's anything wrong with observing, but when I'm talking about a creative practice, if I am sitting there, and yes, I realize I have done this a few times during this podcast, during this video. If I am sitting there and I'm doing that kind of thing, and I'm sitting there going, well, is this good? Is this bad? How does this actually affect things, et cetera, et cetera? Let's put me over here. There we go. I know I should have done this a long time ago, but not about observing at all. But if we are, that puts us apart from the thing. It separates us. And if we're separate, then we're not being present. We are not, if you are separate from something, you're not embodying it. So when we are doing our creative practice, or when again, look at that. Look at me being prescriptive. When I am talking about my creative practice and how I want to embody my neuroqueer creative practice, I want it to be not about observing the process. I want it to be experiencing the process. And it's not about what we end up with. I don't know if I'm going to end up with a YouTube Live or not. But I do know that regardless of whether I have or not, I have enjoyed being within that. And I guess it's okay that I am observing it because really in this case, yes, I'm creating a zine, but what I'm really doing is I'm creating a YouTube Live. That's what I am creating right now. And within that, I am creating words with my voice. I'm creating lettering. I'm creating paper things. And I am expressing some ideas and ideals to see if you like them. And Aside from the fact that Ecamm does have a little clock up here telling me how long I've been, I really don't have any perception of how long it's taken. Yay for some really useful ways that my ADHD can help. So when it comes to creative practice, oh, sorry, I was wrong. There are 2 swear words. There's the word fuck, and there is the word shit. Because when it comes to your creative practice, instead of being apart from it, instead of judging it and trying to say, well, I didn't do this long enough, or that practice didn't go well enough, or things like that, just be in it. Just do the stuff. And you may say, I said to myself, wait a minute, I used the word shit. That's terrible. That's putting another value judgment on this. And I'm actually going to say that it's not, because shit is compost. It's fertilizer. It's a very necessary part of things. The fact that we tend to devalue it because we don't really think of it is because we don't think about the role that it plays in our lives. And can you imagine how awful life would be if you didn't have it, if it didn't exist? So when it comes to your creative practice, embody that shit. All right, so let's see how this works. We're going to read it from the beginning and see if it works. A Neuroqueer Creative Practice Manifesto by Gray Miller. Don't romanticize one practice over another. If just being yourself is an act of creation, then creating in any form becomes creativity embodied. Consistency is a hobgoblin, whether it's foolish or no. Trust your gut. Fuck better. Fuck improvement. Fuck mastery. Whatever you are creating at the moment, if it is actually the thing that you feel drawn to create, it is, well, not better by some arbitrary standard created by you or others. The only art worth mastering is the art of creating joy for myself. I mean, if other people like it, benefit from it, that's great. But neuroqueer creative practice, it has to be rooted in the practice of joy. It's not about producing better art or getting faster or bigger or making more money. It's about increasing the joy. No. Neuroqueer doesn't just mean not accepting others' judgment of your art. It's also not taking the enculturated, socialized, internalized standards either. It's about finding the joy in the creative act, not pursuing it, finding it. It's not about achieving a vision. It's not about observing at all. It's about experiencing the process for its own sake. Embody that shit. And then at the bottom here, I'm going to have a link both to Papermancy and also to the Neuroqueer Creative Practice website. We care more because I owe them a lot about that. And I'm going to make one little extra addition here. That's not the right pen. I guess I could make it on other paper. So you may have noticed that by taking out that whole bit about not using those words of like violence, that I kind of lose the thread about how it goes increasing the joy, and then I go right into the not accepting other people's and not taking it. So I'm going to put no, and then I'm going to take. First I was like, oh no, I don't have a way to write this, but I can just take this paper. And I'm just going to write in. Damn these pens. Damn them to heck. Not increasing. And I think that if I do this, that will serve as a good bridge By the way, it might be time for me to get myself another Uhu stick, because that is just about dead. No, not increasing. And I actually like that it looks a little different. Not increasing. It's about finding. And if I underline the word finding, boy, I am getting very, it's about finding the joy in the creative act, not pursuing it, finding it. And that actually, I decided that does actually bug me that it's that much thinner. But that's because this is my joy. It's going to give me more joy if I look at it and it has that there. There are other things about it that I am not going to care about. Not increasing. So I am going to, now that I've finished this, like I said, I'm going to put that, by the way, the links that I mentioned will be in the, I'll put them in the notes for this particular live stream in the archive version, but I'll put it there too. I will Xerox this and I'll have it as a download available on PayHip site, which is available through the papermancy.art site. And this will be one of the pay what you want kind of things. If you don't want to pay anything, you can just download this and I would love to share it. But if you feel like giving a tip or something like that, you're welcome to do that too. All right, there we have it. We have done the thing. Thanks for joining me.